So, welcome everybody to our November webinar. Apologies for the last minute switch up on time. That was a little bit of a mix up on our Zoom account, on our calendar, the squad's calendar. I take full responsibility for that. So, thank you for the flexibility. Today, we have Liz Taylor, CEO of the Corporate Bestie, here to talk about some metrics. But before I pass the mic off to her, just a quick plug for the Enablement Squad. If you are not already a part of the Enablement Squad, I will drop the link to join our Slack community. We have over 4,500 enablement professionals in our Slack, constantly, daily, talking, interacting, connecting, sharing, collaborating with one another. And a lot of the magic from the squad comes from members directly, just like Liz herself, who raised her hand to host this webinar. So please join, please get involved any way you can. And with that, Liz, I will pass it off to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that intro. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'd love a solid thumbs up or something to let me know that you got it. And I see some familiar faces here. Hello, new friends and old friends. It's so good to see you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I cannot think of a better topic to talk about on a Monday morning than metrics. Okay. I also cannot think about a better topic to talk about at the end of the year than metrics. So let's go ahead and dive in because there is so much to cover. I want you to pull out your phones or open up a browser because I want to know a little bit about you before we dive into our session today. So you can scan the QR code or you can join via a browser at slido.com and enter in this, hashtag number. But I would love to know, what is your role at your current company? And if it's not listed here, select other, but also maybe drop it in chat and let me know what it is. We're already getting some individual contributor sales enablement, some other. Okay, very good. I have two more questions, so I do want to make sure that we get a nice solid response. Again, we're talking about metrics today. It's really important that I kick off the session with getting some kind of data, some kind of metrics. Okay, cool. I like seeing a little mixed bag here. We have 15 respondents so far, 16. Fabulous. I'll give you another second because there's 26 of us total. So I'll go ahead and change this slide in 3, 2, 1. Let's go to our next slide, which is our next question. How long have you been in your role? Love to know what the tenure of this group is. And I find that metrics, it's an interesting language. And the reason why I'm asking this question is because regardless if you are, tenured into your role or you're new to sales enablement or GTM or whatever, Rev Ops, we don't always speak metrics language. So it's helpful for me just to see, though, what we have in our virtual room with us today. All right, I got another 16. Fabulous. I have a feeling that 16 is going to be our magic number. We probably have some people listening, taking a walk, listening, multitasking. I hope you're listening, engaging with me today. We'll get there shortly too. All right, let's go to the next question in 3, 2, 1. All right, this one's open response. What do you struggle with when it comes to metrics? What is some of your struggles? What are some of your struggles? What are some of your challenges? I have an idea of what they are. Actually, I have a slide that already is teed up because I know what some of them are. Stakeholder alignment, ROI, siloed data. What else? Starting with bad data. Oh, garbage in, garbage out, right? Consistency, aligning cross-functionally, leadership buy-in. Okay, consistency is getting to be a bigger word. Worrying I take too much credit for other contributions and lose credibility. Access to metrics. Okay, tactical. Oh, this is really good stuff. All right, so our two key themes right now are consistency and aligning cross-functionally. I think this is going to be a really good conversation for today. And hopefully, I feel pretty confident you're going to walk away with some really great ideas for how you're going to be able to create consistency and how you're going to better align cross-functionally the different data sets that you have. It does require effort to do it, right? It's very easy to say, that's not my job. But as somebody who is in sales enablement, who wants to be able to show the ROI on something, it is our jobs. So let's make sure that we make that as easy for ourselves as possible. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get into my next slide. So yes, it is so nice to meet you and thank you for having me. I just want to share a little bit about who I am and what I do. As mentioned, my name is Liz Taylor. I am CEO of the Corporate Bestie. This is a moniker that I earned because when I was in corporate America, I was the go-to gal for our sales organization. If I didn't know the answer that somebody needed, I knew the person who did. And it's just something that has become a part of my professional brand and persona. And I lean into that every chance I get. I have always been in a customer facing role. I'm not going to go through my timeline here, but I've always been in a customer facing role and I've always been supporting sales either directly or indirectly. And I've always been taking a lot of pride in the sales enablement and rev ops functions. I really believe that as rev ops, sales enablers, okay, if we are not helping our sellers make more money, do something faster, make their jobs easier, what are we even doing? That is the point of our job. And so I really consider myself a learning and development expert who is very specific and narrow in audience when it comes to sales. And so I'm coming off a 12-year career in enterprise sales enablement where I supported very large accounts, a lot of salespeople at that level. And now I'm doing my own thing and I'm doing sales enablement strategy, sales training, and manager development. Who I am other Okay, I'm a dog mom. I love my dog. I love Beyonce. I'm really into health and wellness. That's my jam. I have 10 hilarious nieces and nephews who I love to talk about all day long. And I love talking about Chicago. Anything Chicago, restaurants, museums, activities, things to do. I'm your gal. Now I want you to take your turn because it is Monday morning. Open up that chat. Who are you? What do you love to talk about? What are you passionate about? What excites you? How can I connect with you after this call? Share a little bit about your personal life in that chat box very quickly.
Let's go with.
Chat box should be at the top of the screen. If you take your cursor, you're going to be able to pull up a chat icon, and that's where you can drop that. Hannah's a Chicago girl too. Well, nice to meet you, Hannah. Where are you from in Chicago? Emily loves to talk about the future of work with AI and gardening. I love that. Hannah, you're from Lakeview. I'm from the polar opposite end of Chicago. I'm a South Sider, but it's really great to have you here. Hi, Chris. I see you, and I know that you love helping teams and helping teams level up. That's so exciting. And you love talking about the Chiefs. Okay. Yes. Well, everyone's kind of better than the Bears, by the way. And the Chiefs are really good. Okay. Fabulous. I got one more. Oh, we got a couple more popping in here. Okay. Fabulous. I love seeing all of this stuff. All right, you all. I hope you are seeing these connections. Okay. Here's what I really love to emphasize in my sessions. We are people before we are employees. Okay. So when we're having conversations, it's really important that we're just connecting and getting to know each other as people. All of the stuff that we have to do for work will come, but when we can connect on a human level, all of that other stuff just becomes easier. We can collaborate better. We can listen. We can just lean in and get to know each other. So I am in the Slack channel. I do hope that you all can take some time to get to know me, and I do hope that I can get some opportunity to get to know you as well. Also, reach out and get to know each other. And here is my next slide, and this is where I'm setting big expectations. Okay, no more boring training. Okay, I just can't handle another hour-long session where I have to sit and listen to somebody talk at slides. Okay, learning does not happen in slides. Learning happens in conversation and collaboration. I am going to give you a lot of information today, but what makes today successful and useful, and you're going to walk away with something impactful, is because you've contributed. You've dropped something in chat. You've come off mute. You've asked a question. You've added comments. You said, I really love that. I really don't like that. Whatever it is, this is a place for learning, and I want to make sure that you're enjoying it. All right, everybody, drop an emoji. Let me know that we're on the same page and you're ready to go, and we're going to dive into this. Love it. Okay, nice little heart. We have 29 people on this call. I expect to see 29 emojis, okay, in this chat box. I love it. Cool. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so we talked about common challenges in that word cloud thing, right? And so I want to share with you some of the common challenges that I'm also seeing in data in environments in work environments. Hang on, there we go. How about some of these? Do any of you experience low response rates? Are you having a hard time manually tracking your data? Maybe you have too much data. Maybe there isn't any integration feasibility. Someone mentioned data silos, right? Our systems aren't talking to each other. There's unclear KPIs, right? Are any of these resonating with you a little bit too? Because this is definitely something that I've seen, okay? In my experience, one of the biggest challenges was being able to prove how enablement programs like sales methodology training or Salesforce training or new hire training, right? How these impacted the business and overall seller performance. And so here's what we're covering today, okay? We have 47 minutes, okay? We're gonna run through this stuff very quickly because the fact of the matter is each of these 5 things, we could probably spend an hour alone on each of these topics, okay? So here's what we're going to do. I want you to walk out of here with some creative ideas to bring your metrics together in a meaningful way so that you can show the impact of your programs and the impact that it has on the business. So let's get into measurement framework and survey strategy. Does anybody know what this is? If you do, come off mute, let me know. Drop it in chat. Has anybody seen this before? Nina, thumbs up. Fabulous. Okay, I got Levi, a thumbs up. I got a lot of not sure. This is a measurement framework that you can be using for all of your programs, okay? I want to introduce you to the Kirkpatrick model. The Kirkpatrick model of evaluation is a framework used to evaluate learning programs and is a sales enablement is a subset of a learning program, okay? So any training event, your enablement programs, GTM programs, product training, if you're doing any kind of event where you are upskilling a seller, this is your opportunity to leverage this framework. And so what I want to do is just quickly look at this triangle, this model from a top-down perspective. And I'm going to break these down for you very simply. So starting at the top, L1, level 1, this is our most common measurement that we capture today, and that is done through surveys. This is giving us an opportunity to really understand what is useful about the program or the thing that we just did, okay? Sometimes it's like the smiley face. Did you enjoy this? Level 2 is really going to be about the actual learning. So do your learners actually remember what they are absorbing in your session? Usually this takes form in a quiz or a knowledge check or an assessment of some kind, okay? Level 3, have they applied it? This takes us a step farther, okay? It helps us understand if learners have applied what they actually just sat down and learned, okay? So we usually can measure this through role-playing, observations, and just a person's ability to effectively demonstrate if they actually have applied something. And then lastly is L4. So this is going to be, and this is the most challenging for some of us, right? But this is what is the business impact, okay? How are we showcasing ROI as a result of the programs that we've rolled out? And PS, ROI, and I think this is a common misconception, ROI does not always have to mean dollars. ROI is impact, result on impact, okay? So that's what we're really going to talk about a little bit today as we go through some of these. I know that it can be hard to think about how we layer in all of these different things in our broader survey strategy, but when you, especially with it being the end of the year and we're getting into a new year, very, very soon here in 7 weeks, you can think about your program measurement and business impact if you're thinking about your learning in these 4 different kinds of ways and how you're measuring seller success. All right, I'm going to give you a little bit of a survey strategy that you can help create consistency across your metrics. So I always recommend coming up with a standardized approach to survey strategy. For example, if you are running a new hire onboarding program and a seller skill program and a sales methodology program, you should create consistency across all of your surveys so that you can further identify trends. So, for example, are you consistently gathering tenure role data, or are you looking at segment and line of business data? Or are you asking questions about the skills in the surveys, and are you able to tie that back to opportunities somehow? So if you're looking at, say, seller skill program data, new hire onboarding program data, product training data, if you are being very consistent in and standardizing your approach to how you're doing surveys, you'll be able to start pulling out segments and trends within the data across the different data sets. So think about, this is useful because when you think about the consistency and the kinds of questions that you're asking, you'll be able to see those program enhancements. I also want to just quickly touch upon considering how you schedule out these surveys. So are you sending them out right away? Are they coming from the same person? Are you sending them via text message? Do you have some kind of communication cadence around surveys and what you're collecting? This is just really important because you need to be able to anticipate your sellers completing these surveys. And we already know that response rates can be kind of, we want strong response rates. We don't always get them. So the more predictable that we can make some of the surveys that we're sending out, the better off we'll be. And we'll start seeing some of those metrics come back. I'm going to just do a quick pause. How are we doing so far? Following along, questions, comments. Again, you make this successful. Okay, I see some thumbs up. We're going to keep going. All right. This is the bestie way, okay? So this is something that you can take with you, and I'm happy to share these slides after this session, and you can copy and paste this and lift this into your respective programs and organizations. But every survey, regardless of the program, needs to follow a survey approach, and this is how you can get to that consistency. First of all, you need to begin with a goal. If you don't know what you are measuring, then you are not going to capture helpful information in your data, okay? It's not enough to say, we want to measure program effectiveness. We have to reposition it to think about how are we going to understand what makes this program effective? Those are two different things. And so just getting really clear and thoughtful in how we're developing those surveys is going to help us do that. Let's get to establish your audience. You want to capture demographic information for every survey, just like I said. So you'll not only be able to see what kind of roles and tenure people are completing the surveys, but you'll also be able to tie trends across programs. So let's say, again, for example, we have that new hire onboarding program, that seller skill program, a sales methodology program, a product program. If we are putting thought into how we are, teeing up the demographic information, we can say, all right, let's take a look across surveys and see how account executives, specifically in strategic accounts, are responding to the different kinds of programs. Are they finding value in program A? Are they finding value in program B? If so, what are the value takeaways that they are getting, right? So you can really start to slice and dice your data and understand how your programs are impacting certain populations within your organizations. The third thing here is specify your questions, because what you are measuring needs to tie back to program objectives, okay? We need to be asking very specific questions and really soliciting very specific responses. For example, if I sent out a survey after this session and I blankly asked you, what did you find useful? That is not going to be helpful to me. I'm not going to be able to, you're not even going to remember a fraction of what we talk about. Our adult brains just don't work that way. So if I give you a very specific set of things that ask you, what did you find valuable, which PS I'm going to, you can then select and tell me what you found valuable. I can then take a look at that data and go, okay, these are topics or areas that they found valuable, and now I can go ahead and take away or adjust what I need to. Which gets me to number 4, T for test. What is working and what is not working? You should be measuring subject matter relevance through your survey approaches. So if I roll out a training on sales process and we're talking about verifiable outcomes associated with early stage sales process, you would want to measure which verifiable outcomes would land the most with those sellers. And so I'll show you a little bit in how we can do that in our next kind of takeaway here, but we really want to make sure that we're using this as an opportunity to gauge content relevance within our surveys. The fifth one here is interpret for action. So if you aren't going to use the data and make enhancements to your programs, then don't waste question on it. Your survey results need to be an indicator of what you need to keep doing and what you need to pull back on. Don't ask a question for the sake of asking a question. Don't ask a question for the sake of if you already know that you're not going to take action on that data. And then lastly, ensure it's easy. Okay, I keep questions to 10 or surveys to 10 questions max, sometimes 11. Okay, make them short, make them sweet, make them easy to access. Drop survey links before your people go. Build out time in your session so that they can complete them. Text it to them, send it immediately after a session, send a 24-hour reminder, send a 3-day reminder. You really want to make sure that you are getting really solid feedback, and you also want them to know why their feedback is so valuable. It's one thing to say, take the survey, but it's another thing to say, take the survey so that we can continue to build out this program so that future sellers benefit from what we're doing. Is Bestie pre-survey distribution? Um, Bestie is really how you're going to build out the survey. So yes, I guess pre-survey distribution, unless there's something more specific you're getting after here that I'm missing. But when you are creating your 10 question, easy to access surveys, you should be following these specific objectives. Cool. Got it. Thanks, Jay. Alan, what tools do you all use to send surveys, track responses, send reminders to complete? I use SurveyMonkey. I'm a huge fan of SurveyMonkey. I would love to know what everyone else is doing. I struggle with Teams because it's a form, it's not a survey. I struggle with things like Slido and Poll Everywhere because those are polls. Those are not survey tools. True survey tools are going to allow you to add logic, slice and dice data, and get to trends and insights that you wouldn't have had otherwise. Otherwise, if you're collecting Teams data or Poll Everywhere data and compiling it, it just becomes more of a manual process. So that's just my personal take on that. But I would definitely love to hear from other people. Do you survey before and after a training or just after? I guess that's more knowledge measurement. I think it depends. So in this type of instance, I did a quick poll because I wanted to level set with who was in the room. If you find that you're not going to get survey responses very well from your population of people, you can absolutely do a benchmarking survey before and then do a benchmarking survey after to see the improvement that has changed over the course of time. I actually just did this with a client. I did a 3-part lunch and learn series on leading across generational lines. And in the very first session, I asked them like, what was their confidence level in being able to communicate effectively with people in other generations? And then I also asked them, how do you feel, like how frequently do you feel misunderstood from other generations? And so then I was able to tee up those questions early on in the first session. By the time the lunch and learn series was over, which was 3 different 1-hour sessions, I could see those, I did those same questions and I can see how those metrics changed. So I think you just have to get creative and when it's appropriate to do a pre and post training. Okay, let's move on because we still have so much to go. I want to talk about NPS style survey questions and how incredibly effective they are when you are trying to gather information. And PS, I know we're talking about metrics. Survey is only one piece of the pie. We're going to get to business impact shortly. Okay, so this is grossly oversimplified, but right now we are all probably asking, our survey questions on a 5-point Likert scale. This is a 3-point Likert scale for sake of conversation and, for a visual aid, but we might be looking across our programs and saying, do you agree or disagree with what you've heard today, with how valuable this content was? Does it resonate with your role? And like, okay, cool, but that doesn't really help us get to any kind of quantifiable or actionable data that means something. So for Net Promoter Score, and I know we're all in sales enablement, but I don't want to assume that everybody knows what this is. Would anybody love to just come off mute and share what is NPS? Can just like someone raise their hand and share with the class, what is NPS and why do we collect it?
Yeah, I could give it a shot.
Hey, Alan, go for it.
Hey, um,
Hey.
basically, yeah, asking, I guess in this case, your training attendees if they would recommend this training to a friend. I think that's a basic question. And then 9, 10 is promoter. Obviously, you have the different tiers here.
Absolutely. Thank you. Taylor tokens, you get a lot of Taylor tokens. These don't mean anything. They're just like, bonus, not real money. But love it. Okay, so NPS allows us to understand who are your promoters, who are your passives, who are your detractors, who are the people who are going to say, Liz's program was so awesome that you absolutely have to attend it. Okay, so what we can do is we can position our questions in our surveys NPS style so that we better understand content relevancy. And I'm gonna give you 3 examples of what that looks like. Let's say that we did a training series, again, on early stage selling activities, and we covered these 2 topics, outbound sequencing and discovery calls. If I ask the sellers, I want you to rank the value of each of these topics from our sessions on an NPS scale, I can see here that outbound sequencing was pretty valuable, right? But when I take a look at discovery call questions, I know that there's some work to do. So instead of me going in and asking sellers what resonated the most with you, which topic do you have the most confidence in, which topic do you did not sit well with you, we can ask them to rank the topics, and then we can take a look and see outbound sequencing crushed it. We're doing something right with outbound sequencing. When it comes to discovery call questions, we definitely have some work to do. So when we go and modify our content, let's start there. Jennifer, I've used Simple Stat before, but I didn't find it. Oh, okay, got it. Measuring tool. Cool, cool. Let's take a look at another example. All right, here's another one. Indicate the exercises that have been useful for your early stage conversations. Okay, when a seller can rank a skill set they've acquired in a training, I can directly see that while though they are both not even in neutral zone, like these aren't promoters at all. But if I'm going to enhance the exercises and focus on areas that need improvement, this is going to give me a really good view into what I need to prioritize first. In a world where everyone's got a hair on fire, everything is important, we all need to get things done, doing less with more, all of that, right? Why not focus on the things that we know need the most attention instead of them all just being, they all need attention, right? This allows us to get a little bit closer into pinpointing where we can update our content and then make sure that it's most relevant to sellers. I also want you to start paying attention to some of these questions that I've teed up because we're going to get into behavioral impact questions next. Third example, which of these programs have influenced an opportunity for you? Okay, so lastly, when we use NPS style across programs, if the trainings they are attending are impacting opportunities, we can just straight up ask them. We don't have to do that data ourselves. We can ask them, what helped you in your opportunities, right? So when we have a consistent survey strategy and we're asking the same, 80 to 100% likeness of questions across programs, we can see, okay, well, product training is doing something right. Salesforce training is totally missing the mark. This is a high risk priority training and we need to address it, right? So what is product training doing? And how do we recreate what product training is doing so that we can see improvements in Salesforce training? And I mean, quite frankly, when it comes to impacting opportunities, you want to see your Salesforce training do well, right? So when we can say we have consistency in our surveys and how we're measuring success across our programs, we can now start comparing apples to apples. And we can see what's working well. And we can try to modify and duplicate the practices and approaches and the behaviors that we're doing and duplicate them across programs so that we are creating a consistent learning experience for the sellers. Okay, again, I'm pausing here. Any comments, questions, feedback on how we do NPS for surveys before we move, because we're going to move off surveys shortly here. Isn't this example apples to oranges? Salesforce.com is process, not product, AEs. Yes, it is, right? And I think use your judgment within your own environment. Some of the environments that I've worked in, they take similar approaches. They've taken similar approaches to what the learning is even like. So they have governance around if you're going to deliver a training to a salesperson, it has to meet this certain kind of criteria. So from a learning experience perspective, we were able to say, okay, Salesforce training, product training, right? And this is just an example. But if you have that consistency, it just gives you a little bit more insight into where you can, lift and shift some best practices. And yes, there is probably a better comparison. Totally open to that feedback. Thank you. You can add it to the survey at the end. Okay. Let's talk about behavioral and impact questions. So another nugget that I want you to start thinking about a little bit differently. Okay, so hopefully you're getting a sense of what these look like and sound like from the previous examples, right? Behavioral and impact questions. I personally don't find value in asking questions about, like, how did you feel about this, right? Or when we send out surveys and it's like, was this session the right amount of time? Those are things that sellers don't always have control over, but we have control over those. And we already know the answers to those questions. So why not be incredibly thoughtful in the questions that we're putting in the surveys to better understand impact and behavior? So this is our level 3 triangle, okay? And these types of questions really allow us to ask what a respondent has done or the effect of an experience has had on their ability to do their job. So I'm not talking about confidence or motivation. I'm talking, tell me very specifically, what about this training have you applied? And so the 3 examples that I just gave of NPS are really great examples of how we can assess impact. And as long as we're asking the right questions, we can assess impact there. I'm just going to give you quick examples of what we don't want to do and what we might want to do instead. So instead of asking very 2D questions of, was this helpful? How confident are you? Were the materials useful? Which skills will you use right away? I always try to position these instead. Of course, would you recommend this training? Which exercises have you been using? I'll give you an NPS and you can show me the frequency at which you're using these exercises. Which ones will you use moving forward? Anything else to add? I do want to call out a couple of things. I try to avoid asking questions that are too open-ended. I tend to work with clients who I review surveys and I'm like, I don't understand what it is that we're measuring. Two important things here. When you are asking, what can be done differently? What can we improve upon? And what do you need to be successful? This is the same question. We are thinking about it and understanding it differently from our brains. But as a survey respondent, I just told you what was difficult. In what I told you was difficult, that is something that, or what could have been done differently. I am also implying that is something that we can improve upon. I am also implying that that's something that I need to be successful. So we need to be really thoughtful about how we frame up that question. And again, it goes back to be very specific in what it is that you want to measure. What do you want to know about what can be done differently? What do you want to know about what improvements look like? What do you have in your control so that you can make those updates accordingly? The other thing is the open-ended questions. I see a lot of surveys with too many open-ended questions. You're not getting quantifiable data there. You need to be able to tell them what it is that you are trying to understand and really dissect. Again, you are the one who has a goal in the measurement of the survey, right? Not the person on the other end of it. Also, I would just say when it comes to open-ended questions, I usually add like 1 or 2 in there max. So I don't know where you all are at. Again, I see a lot of surveys where there's just way too many open-ended questions, 1 or 2 max, and I usually keep it very vague and high level. What else would you add? This gives them an opportunity to be creative and what other feedback they would want to consider, have us consider. We're going to move off to question or to the next little nugget of 4. Again, I'm keeping an eye on time. Let's talk about quantifying qualitative data. Nina, I wouldn't normally leverage survey for level 3 behaviors. I would prefer to use observable behaviors, role play, scorecard, gong, observation, complete. Yep, definitely. Not all clients that I've worked with, and even in the enterprise, have had the ability to do that. And so if it's not, managers don't have time to fill out something, like an observation checklist, or they didn't want to do the role play, or there was a skill will issue going on. We didn't always have the ability to allow that level 3 insight. And so that's where we tried to incorporate level 3 questions within the surveys. That gave us something just a little bit more measurable. But I've seen all different ways of actually capturing level 3. Okay, when we are going to quantify our qualitative data, that means we have tons of open-ended responses, and maybe we're conducting focus groups to collect data on programming, okay? So how do we take focus group sentiment and turn it into actionable insights? Jesse, sometimes it's a matter of getting the information the best way you can under the circumstances. Something is better than nothing. Yes, absolutely. I think it's better to be proactive, capture some kind of metric and data point that you know is meaningful, that is going to add value to your program, which PS, you know better than anybody else. So why not just come in and have that position and get it where you can? Especially when data exists in a lot of different places, it can just be really hard to do. Let's talk about focus group feedback, though. I've had a couple conversations with some folks in the enablement squad actually who have been doing focus groups, and there is a way to conduct focus groups and get focus group feedback. We won't talk about focus group best practices. What I do want to talk about is how you need to quantify focus group feedback. And so let's pretend that we are conducting a focus group for a new hire onboarding program. We rolled out a program and now we want to collect data because we need to see how it's landing. We want to dig deeper than our initial survey data, okay? So we have 3 different focus groups. What we are going to ask each of these focus groups is, was the content relevant? Were the materials easy to find? Did they get enough peer-to-peer exposure? To what extent were managers involved? And was it an experience that you would recommend, and what made it successful or unsuccessful? So now, if we have 3 different focus groups, let's say we have 8 to 10 people in each focus group, we have to now organize a lot of just sentiment, a lot of I feels, a lot of subjective data, some objective data. But as focus group facilitators, we need to be as objective as possible. And this is how I've done it. I've leaned into Excel. And what I've done is I give the sentiments and statements that I hear a ranking. And so what you can do is you can go in and create a table that says, categorizes each of the things that we are measuring, okay? And then we can give them a score. We're also using things like recording tools. We're using AI to help us just make sense, because there's no possible way that every single one of these squares in all 3 focus groups will get filled out completely, right? So we do have some legwork to do on our own to make sure that we're getting as much data as possible, but we're coming in from an objective standpoint, okay? So in this instance, 5 is very positive, 1 is very negative. Let's take a look really quickly at our very top participant, Alex R, okay? Alex is giving really high remarks across the board. 5 in onboarding experience, 4 in peer interaction, 5 in relevance to role, 5 in manager support, 4 in accessing required materials. Alex is having a great onboarding experience, and we're really proud of that. That gives us something that we're going to want to be able to better understand later, okay? Because let's take a look at Ben T. He's second from the bottom above Lauren. 2s and 3s across the board, very negative to negative. Not a great onboarding experience. So now what we can do is we can say, okay, let's take a look at Alex and let's take a look at Ben. Do they sit in different parts of the business? Do they have different roles? Do they have different bosses? What is going on here? Oh, well, actually, as it turns out, Ben has a new boss. When he got hired, his boss left, and now he's in a transition state. He's reporting to a VP, but that VP is still trying to find a backfill. Oh, Ben's laptop didn't get there on time. Oh, Ben didn't have a peer-to-peer buddy that his manager assigned him with because of the manager situation. Alex, on the other hand, he was in a totally different business unit. His boss has been around for 7 years. They know exactly what's going on. They've had multiple new hires. It's become a well-oiled machine over there, right? So that gives us a really good opportunity. Now that we know that we have 2 different types of new hire experiences going on, we can further understand what's happening with Ben and how do we prevent that in the future, right? We can now also take a look and see, all right, Ben had a really bad onboarding experience. Alex had a really great one. How does that impact their overall performance? And we can pay attention to them throughout their entire, first year within the company, okay? So it's when we get to this level of granularity, it's very cool because we can start following seller stories and see how successful they are. What happens when we do or do not set up people for success? And then what I've done is once we've taken all of the survey feedback, we would have 3 versions of this in this particular example. We can compile it and we can say, okay, we want to present to our sales leadership where we've seen success. So where are we seeing the 4s and the 5s? And I'm just going to pick on the 4s and 5s for sake of conversation and time and all of that. But then we can take a look and see, this is how people have overall, expressed their, experience or their interaction or their content relevance. 95% of people gave us a 4 or 5, right? 78% of the people gave us content, said that the content was relevant. So we're doing a pretty good job in these areas. Peer interaction could be better. Manager support can be way better. Okay, so if we know that manager support is one of the components of the onboarding experience that's missing the mark, this is an insight. This is something that we can then go and have conversations and next step conversations with managers to say, what's going on from an onboarding experience? Tell me your side of things. How do you think it's going? How do you think your new hires think it's going, right? What's missing here? And so from there, we know that maybe in the next iteration of this onboarding program, or maybe we're not actually updating any new hire content. Maybe we need to focus a 2.0 version or a phase 2 version on how we're supporting managers. Lots of information that I'm throwing at you. I'm going to pause. And again, how are we doing? Do we have questions? Do we have feedback? Or drop an emoji and let me know that you're following along. All right, I see some hands clapping. I see some thumbs ups. Okay, fabulous. And I don't know if like you all are doing this today. I mean, like I said, every organization that I talk to, they are in a different, it is all over the place. Some companies that I work with, they're doing it really great. Some have no idea, they don't even have onboarding programs, right? But what was really cool about this approach too, if you're not doing it already, is these are your benchmarks now. So now this is data that you can look at year over year that actually tells a story about the impact your programs have on the business. One thing that I just want to quickly call out that we haven't talked about, I have not talked about like attendance. Okay. I don't know that I ever really cared as as a corporate citizen and as someone who's trying to steer my clients in a nice direction of program relevance and metrics, but attendance is an interesting story, I guess. You know, we can take a look and see, okay, which kinds of, you know, lines of businesses are participating the most in trainings. Okay, cool. But like what I care about is which sellers are participating the most and how does that tie to their performance, right? So it's less about product training gets more attendance than new hire training, than seller skill training, than some other kind of training. Or, you know, leader A's group, most of those sellers attend trainings and leader B's group doesn't, right? Like, I don't know that I care so much about that. What I care about is of the sellers who do attend, are they crushing it? And if they are crushing it, how do we create repeatable routines and repeatable cadences and behaviors that we can scale to the other sellers? That's what matters. That's what's important. Those are the stories that we want to tell. All right, last and final little takeaway nugget that I want you to think about differently, okay, is performance insights to show impact. So correlation versus causation. Again, I'm going to come to you. Anybody come off mute or drop it in chat or share. How would you define the difference between correlation and causation? Okay, well, I'll give you the answer. It's fine. I know it's Monday. Correlation really allows us to indicate a relationship, okay? The data sets, the variables, it indicates a relationship. Causation indicates a direct relationship. A lot of times we get caught up because we are trying to say, because a seller attended a training program, they increased their revenue by 55%. That is not the data story that we need to be telling. We need to be talking about how correlated metrics are creating a bigger impact, okay? We are capturing correlated metrics and creating a data story that allows us to show impact because that is the actual story that we are looking to tell. And so I want to, again, grossly oversimplified slide, but I think of metrics in 4 different buckets, okay? We have quantitative data, we have our qualitative data, we have operational metrics, and we have performance metrics. And again, based on where you sit in your organization or how your organization views these things, maybe there are some performance metrics that you would actually put in op metrics and vice versa. This is just meant to show you that there are 4 different data sets that exist, okay? And so as sales enablement people, we need to be able to go in and identify which data sets actually matter. And so we already know, like being in sales enablement, that there are certain teams that do tend to perform higher, who are repeatedly exceeding quota every year. We already have a sense of who is struggling, but we might not know all of the stuff in between in the messy middle. So we need to use the data to create a compelling story. So when you know you have a group that is struggling or you know that you need to improve upon something, look for similar signs across the data, right? When we know something is going really well, like for example, if we do have a sales leader who has 80% of his team is completing all of the trainings, okay, cool. Is that reflected in President's Club and sales excellence? Is it reflected in how much they're exceeding their quota? How do they compare to other teams that aren't completing training at the same pace, right? It all depends on what it is that you are looking for and what you want to measure. You are the expert, so you should be able to decide which metrics matter. And here's just a quick example of how we can show impact. This is a fictitious sales team, okay? But let's pretend the sales team we have here, okay? They are responsible for 3 revenue driving lines of businesses, and I've simply labeled them vertical 1, vertical 2, vertical 3, okay? I indicated in green, we can see they've all had medic training at different stages. They went through a Salesforce migration at some point, okay? And they've had not 1, but 2 system outages, okay? This organization also does pulse surveys at the beginning and end of the year so that they can see employee engagement, okay? This sales enablement team was responsible for all the medic rollouts, and every sales manager just received a coaching playbook just before Q4, okay? So while we cannot say that medic training directly caused more revenue, what we can say is each sales vertical exceeded their revenue goals and are trending to perform higher year over year. That is an impactful metric. That is an interesting story to tell, right? And then when we saw accelerated growth in Q3 and into Q4, that's when we rolled out the coaching playbook. So we are doing ourselves a disservice by trying to tie the ROI to dollars when we can be tying the ROI to the overall business impact, right? This is where the business is at. And like you can zoom out of this, right? And show larger revenue goals or show other things that are going on within the organization outside of sales, right? But if you can show how your programming has impacted sales performance in an abstract way like this, that is a very interesting conversation. Okay, again, I'm pausing, checking to see if you're still with me. All right, I got some thumbs up. Okay, are there any questions? I mean, I feel like just want to make sure we're all like gelling. I know again it's Monday. Kristen, you're with me. Fabulous, cool. Okay. I did prepare a case study because as a learning and development person who values impact and hands-on learning and exercises, I do want us to be able to do a quick activity. So I'm going to drop a document in Zoom. It's a 1-page PDF file. And what we'll do is just review this case study independently. So it's a mid-sized SaaS company, okay, and they're struggling with slow opportunity progression. All right, we have low conversion rates. We've launched a CRM. We have a marketing campaign. One team is crushing it, and one team is not. Okay, so I'd love for you to just quickly, maybe in the next like 3 to 4 minutes or so, take a moment to read that, and then we'll come up. I would love for you to come back so we can chat about it and answer some of the questions. So I'll set a timer for 4 minutes. And actually, maybe what we'll do is drop an emoji in chat when you're done, because we don't have to wait for 4 minutes if most of you are done. All right, I'll give another like 30 seconds. Right. Let's go ahead and wrap it up and we'll just head over to the questions. And Amber, you're like, I don't know how I'd answer. So let's open up the floor. Okay. I don't feel strongly about one particular question or another. As you all read this case study, is there one that just resonated with you that you were like, I absolutely know what I would do in this instance? I know it's Monday, but now we're getting to lunchtime. And again, this session is successful because of you. Peer-to-peer learning is really where it's at. What do you got?
I'll start, and I'll go
Great.
with the third question. The
Okay.
correlation, obviously, with team. Hold on, I forgot the team names. Team Scott, the ones
Scott.
who adopted it, clearly have better results. And I think if you've been in enablement for, let's call it, over a year, and you've run a program like this, you've likely seen teams in similar scenarios or even sellers in similar scenarios. People that are hesitant to adopt the training, the programs, the tools, whatever you have in place, might not catch up or see the improvement as their counterparts. But there's also the outliers, those lone wolves who, no matter what they do, how they prospect, how they close, they're just going to get their quota. They're going to exceed it. Those are, like I said, those are outliers. They shouldn't speak for the entire team, but clearly in this scenario, Team Scott is having the better result.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for going first. Plenty of Taylor tokens for you. Jay, I see you are off mute. Did you have something that you wanted to add? Am I picking on you?
No, no, you're good. I actually meant to comment because the question is where is organizational versus the training, the organizational initiatives. And I think you see the training impact where you see the leading indicators on the conversion rates because the
Mhm.
organizational impact, I think, is usually measured further down the process or in trailing indicators. So if you see the conversion rate changes, that's the application of the training with the new messaging or the new marketing that you're taking into the opportunity. Where you see the overall team performances, that is definitely a reflection of the new messaging that marketing is, possibly the new processes, maybe better metrics overall with the new processes, but you're not necessarily able to state uh, with confidence that it has to do with the training.
Right.
Uh,
And that's why correlated data is so important. And we can follow this use case, right, as they perform throughout the year. Chaco dropped in chat. I would ask Team Scott's reps what parts of their skills training was most helpful, list the content areas, and have them rate. Yes. And I would take it a step further and say, don't just ask them what was helpful, ask them what they actually implemented. Because then when you report to your leadership, you're not reporting a metric that sellers felt was helpful. Nobody cares about how they feel. We care about what they actually implemented. So because you position the question in such a way that you can go to your leadership and you can say, well, 78% of sellers implemented these skills. And that's an impact. That's an impact metric. So just really think about how you're coming in and asking those impact questions. Okay, we have 4 minutes left, and I have just a couple more slides, which are next steps for you. Here's what I want you to do after this session. I want you to take this survey, okay? Because of course I teed up a survey, and mine's short. Mine's less than 10 questions, okay? Would love for you to take my survey. And then I also want you to meet with your team. I want you to review your year-end metrics and think about what is the data story that you are telling. Does it actually matter who attended a training, or what matters who attended a training and the success that they have on the business, right? Think about that. Identify what those seller stories are to tell. And actually, there's a slide at the end of this presentation. I'll send the deck out that is a nice little circle of how you can think about creating that data story. And then lastly, create a plan to capture these in 2026. I think about 2026 metrics as soon as Q4 gets here. We need to start thinking about what year over year metrics look like. Are we measuring what we need to be measuring to show that business impact? Is there a data set that I don't have access to that I should have access to that can help add value to this data story, right? So think of it in that kind of way. I would love to connect with you. These are all of the ways to connect with me. I am also on the Slack channel, so find me, DM me, feel free to schedule some time. And thank you so much for having me. It's been a slice, and I hope you all have an awesome Monday. I don't have a hard stop, and I'm happy to stick around if you have questions or just want to chat.
Any additional questions for Liz?
Yeah, I did have a question.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of asked this before about the surveys, but I'm just curious in terms of tracking the metrics. Like, I'm new to sales enablement, longtime seller, so curious. Like, is spreadsheets the way to go? Or the LMS, are they good at tracking metrics? Like, what's your tech stack looking like now? And also for the rest of the squad here, if you want to chime in too, that'd be awesome.
I have so much to say on it, but like I want to throw it to the group. Does anybody have like a top of mind response for Alan?
Yeah, but are you talking the metrics from your surveys, or are you talking the metrics from your performance deltas? What are we measuring?
Kind of an open-ended question, just like the surveys, it sounded like SurveyMonkey, and there's a couple other suggestions there. Um, but like, I mean, Elizabeth showed a couple like screenshots of like spreadsheets, so obviously there's some stuff going on there. But just like tying everything together, like seller A, their survey response was this, their like CRM usage is this, their quote is this. Like, how do you kind of map it and just like tell the story around the metrics that you're
So for
capturing?
Yeah, for me personally, something that I always did when I was in corporate, Q4, I'm not even hosting trainings. I'm spending that quarter crunching numbers. And so what I do is I created a deck. And so then what I would do is that is my metric, but those are our sales enablement program metrics deck. And that's where we are as a team identifying again early on in the year, what are the 4 or 5 metrics that we are chasing to tell a story of how our programs have been effective across the business, and then whatever, and that should be unique to you, right? And then my deck, I'm just updating every year. And sometimes I am pulling in, maybe insurance sellers participated in a certain kind of training more frequently than another seller, and how that tied back to who was eligible for President's Club or Sales Excellence Awards or incentives plans, right? But that was important to us to pay attention to. And so those data sets sit in different places. So I would go and capture those and just pull the visuals for what helped create that story. And then I just created it in a PowerPoint deck that we then presented and shared with our sales leadership at the end of the year.
How do
So that
you
was,
how do
oh,
you
go ahead.
how do you track? I mean, how do you set 4 or 5 goals or metrics at the beginning, given that you've probably got a major product release 3 or 4 times a year, and the message changes, or a new message every other month? So, and
Yeah.
that's just on the product and messaging side. CRM is going to be revised once or twice at the same time.
And so that's a really good question. And I think the answer, for me, the answer is it depends how your organization is structured. So in the corporate environment that I came from, it was incredibly siloed. And so I would sit down with the senior sales leaders every year and say, what do you care about? What do you care about? What would be interesting to see? And then I would tell them what I have access to and what I don't have access to. And then we would just kind of go and create whatever, like I said, whatever data story helped tell the story of what it was that they were looking for. Now, when it comes to Salesforce, for example, didn't touch my team, not in my scope. So if they wanted a Salesforce metric, I can go and try and find correlated data to help show some kind of sales enablement impact. But if they wanted to get into the weeds on Salesforce data, they had to go to the sales automation team. And so not a super great answer, but I do think the bigger the organization, the more complex solving for that gets.
Because I think to Alan's question, because I would have answered, that's why I was trying to understand the difference, whether he was asking about the surveys or the actual deltas and change of performance. Because I'm trying to correlate the campaign or the program against those leading indicators, specifically conversion rates. So I'm driving the salespeople to identify where the weaknesses are in the conversion rates, and then develop a program to address that and see if there's change, right? So So and then to Alan's question, most of the leading LMSs have APIs that plug into the leading CMS or CRMs so that you can pull things like conversion rates and correlate them to program participation.
Yeah,
But
well, and what's
you wind
interesting
up
is
doing a lot of that in spreadsheets.
you do. Well, and that's where you just have to be able to take the spreadsheet data and make it visually interesting, right? Like that's the name of the game. And a lot of it is just it being the enablement experts, us selecting the metrics that help tell the story, right? And what's visually appealing to the people that we are presenting it to. But you said something about the leads, right? So like I'd be interested to know for the lead conversions, well, where are the leads coming from, right? Are they inbound? Are they outbound? Are they coming from, a third party? And is there any correlated data there?
Uh,
Have you uncovered that?
the lead conversion is just top of funnel, stage 0 to 1, or if you call one your SDRs. But there's conversion rates across because you've got 6, 7, 10 stages, whatever. Each stage
Mhm.
has a conversion. What is the gate to move from stage 3 to stage 4? There's a conversion rate there that may
Oh,
expose a weakness in negotiation, for example. Right. So that's why I say conversion rates are leading indicators of the sales motion, and that's where the programs I think are best targeted to for the greatest impact. So
yeah, love it. Um, I love this conversation. Katie posted a question in the chat, and she said, "Is there a best practice recommendation for the ratio of sales team size to the size of an enablement team?" And the answer is yes. Um, I have a Forrester link here that I can drop, and this is like from 2021, but I'll drop it in chat for you here. But there should be for one sales enablement person, like for every 36 seller, there's a sales enablement person. Now, don't quiz me on who's defined or qualifies as a sales enablement person because I think again, the school of thought is like GTM people are sales enablement people. RevOps are sales enablement people. Some organizations view sales enablement as just the training team. I would need to go back and do a refresher on what the link that I just dropped in chat, but you can definitely check that out. And there's a lot of recommendations out there for what that should look like.
Really quickly, I need to jump. Liz, I just made you the host so that you can continue the
Sure.
conversation. Thank you, everyone. Have a
Cool.
good Monday.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And are there any questions, anything else you all want to chat about? I mean, I'm happy to stick around or if you want to go, it's Monday.
I'll throw another question at you.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I'm interviewing, and a lot of the CROs I'm speaking with will say like, when I ask them what a year from now, like what would make this program a success, and a lot of these are like first enablement hire roles and like startup mid-market companies. So not like corporate, but a lot of them will say like, if we could see an increase in win rate by, 2.5 to 5%, like that'd be huge. And so I'm always and speaking with other enablement professionals, again, I'm new to this space, like it's like, are you just kind of is that something that you would agree to as something that you can improve, like a win rate, or is that too lofty of a goal with too many variables, especially at like earlier stage mid-market companies when, to Jay's point, like, shit's changing every month. Yeah, curious how you would respond to that, and also just again, like I know you talked about this a little bit, like have you successfully like tied an enablement program or the enablement function to increased win rates, something at like that directs revenue impacts revenue that much.
I'll answer the second one because it's easy. Nope, haven't been able to directly. I cannot directly tie enablement programs to revenue. It is incredibly hard, and quite frankly, I've never met anybody else that has been able to do that either. So if anybody knows anybody, please send them to me because I want to learn and understand how I can do that. Every time I talk with sales enablement people or even L&D professionals at the organizational level, it is incredibly difficult to do, and it requires a very unique set of circumstances, and there's just too much differentiation across the business. I mean, I was doing onboarding for 9 years, and to even get time to revenue was hard to measure. So it's just there's that. And then I'll answer your second question. Jay, you go.
No, you finish because I wanted to.
Okay. Yeah, I was just gonna say, so if your CROs are saying, hey, we need to see 2% in win rates, Alan, you said that you were a sales guy. Put your sales hat on. Why 2%? What does 2% represent? How do they think they're going to do that? Why do they think 2% is the number? I'm sure there's some kind of formula or metrics person or analyst who is telling them that, but you need to understand why before you even agree, because you're not trying to sign yourself up for something that's not attainable, right? So, and also I would push back and try to seek to understand what is the metric that actually matters. A lot of times, sales leaders, the metrics that they think are important to chase after aren't always the ones that we have the ability in sales enablement to measure anyway. We're measuring program effectiveness. We are measuring, impact to seller performance. We're measuring, all the things that we talked about. So I would want to better understand, like, where is that coming from? Why is that the number? Is that actually attainable before saying, yeah, definitely, let's do that next year? All right, Jay, your turn. I'll hand it
No,
over to you.
I really loved your comment on the 2% because, like you said, is it 2% more customers? Have you increased average contract or annual contract value by 2%? What is actually the number they're actually chasing? You're absolutely right because one you may have to grow your team, one you may have to change your ICP, right? So very interesting challenge there. But I would question whether or not we can measure. We don't have to measure impact on revenue. That's why I keep going back to conversion rates because I come from a quality background and quality says there's no such thing as 100% inspection. You can't fix it at the end. So you chase your way upstream in the manufacturing process, and the farther you can get upstream, the more likely you are to continue to improve so that the final product takes care of itself. So if you look at conversion rates and you see maybe you're converting stage ones, at an 80% to get them to a first customer call, maybe 40% of those are getting to demo, but suddenly you drop off a negotiation to 10 or 15%. Where can we make the biggest change? If we can retain more of that 40% and maybe we get from 10 or 15% up to 25% to get them into contracting, we can actually show impact if we target our campaigns or our programs at negotiation. And that's why I think that we don't have to show revenue specifically, but if we show conversion rate, we can eventually get to revenue.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I hope that was more directed at Alex than at you.
No, I thought that was a
Or
great
Alan.
response.
Yeah.
What he said. Alan, does that answer your questions?
Yeah. Yeah, I think definitely understanding, the why behind a request, like why the 2.5, 5%. And then yeah, like, directing your sales enablement program at specific things throughout the sales process where you can kind of show a jump and then, show a leading indicator was impacted versus,
Mhm.
direct bottom line.
Yeah, love. I want to pay attention to Jennifer's question in chat. So, what are the top metrics that we can measure in sales enablement? I'm also a newer sales enablement individual contributor. So that's a vague question, and I'm going to pick on you a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit about like what matters to you as an individual contributor, or just like what the broader function overall is paying attention to?
Yeah, I was brought on to be an individual contributor where they had never had training or sales enablement at all. And I find myself pushing back a lot on their expectations of what should be measured. My
That's
ears perked
normal.
up. Yeah, and my ears perked up when you said, it's hard for us to tie to revenue because I think they expect that, and I'm having a hard time figuring out how to do that, especially with the sellers. They have a very long sales cycle that could take a year, sometimes multiple. And my initiatives, I'm not sure how to measure them against that type of sales cycle. So I focus a lot on everything you talked about, like sentiment and things like that from trainings. So anyway, just curious what
I
are,
have a
yeah.
question.
Hmm.
Sorry, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Please continue.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so you're the only sales enablement person in this probably very small company. Do you have a marketing
Mhm.
person or any marketing tools or a tech stack there?
Yes, we have two people in product marketing.
Okay.
Hmm. And tech stack, minimal.
Mhm.
Like we don't have Gong or anything like that. Calls aren't recorded.
Okay. Oh, I love this so much. This is where you are working in a blank canvas and you have so
Right.
much ability to influence. I love it. Okay, this is great. So I would work with product marketing to really understand what marketing tools do you have in place and what do you need to have in place in order to track metrics. So just typical
Mm.
metrics that you should be paying attention to, just like as in my opinion, like sales best practices is like quota attainment, win rates, pipeline, right? Total
Hmm.
contract value, average deal
Right.
size. What are your lead conversion rates? How your lead qualifiers, right? A lot of that marketing upfront data, in my opinion, in your situation is going to be incredibly beneficial because it's going to be difficult to invest in sales enablement tools, methodologies, processes if you don't know what's working. And I just marketing has an accountability and a responsibility to feed sales with quality leads. And so I really think that you need that foundation to the house in order to make everything more valuable. And if anybody like is like about that or yeah, right on, like I would love for you to come off mute and share. But I think those are some of the things that you need to start paying attention to is like, where is the money even coming from? And how
Hmm.
does that turn into revenue? And then repeat customers. And then actually, I listened to a webinar last week and I'm going to pull it up for you. Someone, it was a new stat that I had never heard of, and it's called net dollar retention. Has
Okay.
anybody here been tracking net dollar retention? No. Yeah. Okay. So net dollar retention measures the percentage of recurring revenue retained from existing customers. So like that's a really impactful metric that like I have never been paying attention to.
Hmm.
So I think what you need to do is first of all, it sounds like you're in a position where you have to manage up and like really let them know, okay, cool, wish list over here, got it. This is what's realistic and what we can actually achieve. Let's make a plan to first tackle this, get systems, tools, processes in place before we can even get after here. Sometimes a lot of just helping them realize what's possible is part of the battle. I hope that helps.
Yes. That's super helpful. Thank you.
And Jennifer, if you want to like chat about this more in depth, like offline, happy to do that with you. And like we can do like a
Yeah.
brainstorming sesh. Like, let's do it.
Awesome. I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Ah, I love this. I'm so glad that you all had questions and you're getting value. Is there anything else? Anything else we could talk about? I just saw we have more. Cool. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you got a lot out of it. I got out of it. I'm going to check out my survey and see if you actually got something out of it. And I really appreciate you being here. Have a really happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the holidays. Come find me if you want to geek out over sales enablement and training. This is my jam. I hope you all have an awesome Monday and an awesome week. So take care.